This is Hashtag History, episode 123. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah.
And I want to start this episode with a bit of an acknowledgement or disclaimer, if you will.
Okay.
You have all seen the show title. We're discussing the War of 1812.
Mm-hmm.
No surprises there. What is a surprise, however, is that we're discussing the War of 1812. I think I've made it pretty clear on this podcast for all of our longtime listeners that battlefield
military
details, military campaigns, war strategies that's my least favorite part about history.
Sure, yeah.
Have I made that clear?
To me, at the very least. Maybe not all our listeners, but I am aware of that.
Loud
I
and
feel
clear.
like when we were doing the Jacobite one, I saw your eyes glaze over a couple times.
Yeah, if you were to ask me to recall any details about that one now.
Yeah. Other than Bonnie Buttface.
I remembered that. Yeah. So whatever. That's all I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Battlefield details.
Couldn't tell you. Yeah.
Couldn't tell you. And I'm not ashamed to say that. I think it is so wonderful that there are so many military historians out there and people that are really fascinated with this component of history because it is so important. But I'm not one of those people.
And you don't need to be.
And I don't need to be because really that's the beauty of history.
Right.
Is that
there's something for everyone.
There's something for everyone. And we don't all have to love the same things and that's okay.
Yep.
So then why are we discussing the War of 1812?
I am curious now.
Yeah, me too. Was this a good idea? I'm asking myself, why are we discussing this when military history is my least favorite component of history?
Right.
Well, I'm going to suck it up this week.
Okay.
For the greater good.
Okay.
Because while I am not interested in military history, I have always found the War of 1812 fascinating in that it tends to so often be overlooked.
Yes.
I feel like many Americans are not aware that we literally went to war again with Great Britain roughly 30 years after we had gained our independence from them.
Yeah.
In fact, in my research, I often found references to this war as the Forgotten War.
Yeah.
And so while we will, of course, be discussing some battles and military strategy along the way, what I am most interested in talking about this week is really the causes of the War of 1812. How and why we fought again with Britain so soon after the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
How Native Americans were the ultimate losers in this war, and the long-term effects and consequences of what would become known by Americans as the Second War for Independence.
Mm-hmm.
Having said all of that, I want to acknowledge that today's episode will not be a thorough review of the War of 1812. We will not be going through a chronology of the war, talking about key players or, all the victories and defeats. Rather, this is more of an overview of this war that will highlight the major causes and ramifications of the war in an effort to help our American and British listeners alike remember this war better. This episode is meant to be a quick, bite-sized look at this major conflict in American history, not a 2-hour-long History Channel documentary.
I was just going to say, if you're looking for the battle details, go to History Channel.
Go to the History Channel. This is not it. This is the abridged YouTube version of it. It really is.
Yeah.
So now I know that I personally am going to need a drink to get through this episode. So how about we do that?
Okay.
All right.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah.
And this is Hashtag History,
the podcast for both history nerds and history haters alike,
where we dive into history's greatest stories of controversy, conspiracy, and corruption.
All right.
Huge shout out to our dear friend Alicia Gutierrez Romine for buying us a total of 5 cocktails.
Oh my God, she's so generous.
I know. If you don't remember, Alicia was a guest on our show a few seasons ago. It's been a while.
Seasons ago.
And she discussed the criminal abortion history in California. And if you haven't listened to that episode, which is number 70,
wow,
I highly recommend that you go do that. It was a really informative episode for me.
Me too.
Yeah.
No, it was very eye-opening. She's super brilliant and does a lot of really great work. You should definitely check her out. And otherwise, she's just really super supportive of the podcast.
Yeah. She offered us her guest house
when we were going to Disney.
and we've never met this woman.
She's so cute too, because I had said something like, yeah, we're hoping to come down this time or whatever. But I don't know. I made some comment about like, thanks for offering us your couch. And she was like, I would like to clarify that I offered you a full guest room.
No, I think that might have been on the Zoom.
Yeah, that sounds right. She was like, excuse me.
Yeah, wait a minute.
It is an all-inclusive
She's like, it's like
guest experience.
Yeah. It's like a pool house or something.
Exactly. Well, thanks for that, Alicia.
And thanks for the cocktail sponsors.
Thank you so much.
As well.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. Now, before I dig into this week's cocktail, I want to be upfront.
Oh my gosh, we're being so honest this week.
I know.
As opposed to us normally lying through our teeth the entire time.
We are currently 123 episodes deep.
That's true.
And as I've mentioned multiple times, it is becoming harder and harder to find relevant cocktails. And more importantly, not repeating cocktails. I'm going to be honest, I don't even remember half of the ones we've had here.
I was going to say, if you repeated, I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Truly.
So apologies. This one, I'm 99% sure haven't had it before. But if that happens in the future, I just wanted to...
We're discussing the War of 1812, and you're like, so here's the Sinatra smash that we'll be having this week.
Totally. Which I actually just had essentially
Did
the
you?
Sinatra smash. Yeah.
It was so good.
Oh, I love that one.
I remember that one.
Yeah.
So good.
Anyways, I just wanted to say that and announce that woe is, in fact, me. So, luckily, after about 45 minutes, and that's not an exaggeration, of internet research and finding nothing related to this, I somehow stumbled upon an article on a website called robreport.com, which was titled, How to Make a Don't Give Up the Ship the gin cocktail for when you need liquid courage. And then the subtitle was, the British may have burned down the White House during the War of 1812, but at least we got a cocktail out of it.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool article all about how this cocktail allegedly derives or was inspired by the War of 1812 at the very least, referencing the fledgling U.S. Navy in the article and going into more details. So I recommend you read that.
That's cool.
Because it was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Anyways, here's the recipe.
Ready.
1.5 ounces of gin, a half ounce of sweet vermouth.
We'll see.
Yeah. We bought a new bottle of it.
I think that's going to change things.
Actually drinking some
Fresh
vermouth that's not expired.
You may find you love it.
Well, yeah.
It's possible.
A half ounce of Fernet Branca, which is I did a little bit of looking into what it was because I did find it in our Total Wine and buy it, but it's like a bitter. It's like an Italian bittery thing, and you did research on it too.
I did. I'll let you finish out because mine's a little longer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then a half ounce of Curacao, and you garnish with an orange twist. Instead of an orange twist, I actually did an orange slice because it's prettier to me.
It's so much prettier. I love it.
And you're supposed to add all the ingredients into a mixing glass and stir on ice for 15 to 20 seconds. Strain off the ice into a footed coupe or cocktail glass and garnish with an orange peel or a wedge.
Yeah, what I was going to say, if you listened to last week's episode, you heard my little personal announcement that I'm pregnant. And so I have been having mocktails on the podcast for the last season plus. And so I did a lot of research trying to find alternatives.
I know, yeah.
And some of these things there just aren't alternatives. So mine's kind of more of just like an orange drink with the Rituals alternative gin, which I'm really excited about. But in doing that research to try to find non-alcoholic alternatives, the Fernet Branca, when I was looking it up, there's actually, so I couldn't make an alternative, number one. So I don't have that in my drink, but I learned all this interesting history about it. So when it was first produced in 1845 in Milan, and what's so interesting is it was actually marketed as a medicine. It was marketed to cure fevers, cholera, and menstrual pain.
Wow.
I thought that was so cool. That's all the history that I have.
Yeah.
But I was like, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
There were a lot of medicinal purposes for alcohol.
Yeah. I
early
think
on.
a lot of bitters, especially because I was telling Rachel this, and I don't
right.
think I've told this story before on the podcast, but we were in San Francisco, my husband and I, a few months ago, and we're sitting out on a patio eating dinner at a restaurant, and this couple sits next to us, and then they run into, there's a drugstore right next door to this restaurant, and she runs out and she's carrying a bottle of bitters, like the Angostura bitters, and she starts shaking it into, I don't even think she had an alcoholic drink. It was like a tea or something, and she starts shaking it into it. And my mind is like, what the is happening here? Like, what is going on?
So urgent that you had to run to the store for it.
And so I was just like, no shame. I just asked her, I was like, what, you just bought bitters? Like, what's going on? And she was like, yeah, I carry bitters with me everywhere I go, and I just forgot them today. It's apparently like helps your stomach. Again,
that is awesome.
I don't know.
I mean, based on its history, which granted, medical history is not always accurate, right?
Especially in the 1800s.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, maybe there are some legit medicinal purposes for it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyways.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Do you love it?
I kind of like it. It has that like bitter aftertaste of gin and vermouth that we don't love, but I can live with it.
What's the rating?
6.
That's high.
If I had just a little bit more orange liqueur in there, I think I would it might be even higher.
Oh my God.
What's happening?
Fresh vermouth is what's happening.
But we didn't like it the first time we used it either.
We were young and dumb.
We were inexperienced.
Yep. We were young, dumb, and broke. Now
That
we're
is true,
still broke.
Right. I still got the cheapest vermouth possible.
Not young anymore. Slightly less dumb?
I would say so, yeah. We've lived some, since...
We've lived some, and we've learned about at least 122 things up to this point. So...
Cheers to that, man.
Cheers to learning about 122 things. All right. Yum?
It gets worse as I drink it. I'll leave the rating where it's at, but I mean, that second drink was not as good.
I told Leah this. I've said this a couple times. Drinking, I actually surprisingly haven't missed it all that much with obviously not drinking during pregnancy. There have been a few times where I'm like, man, that cocktail looks good.
Yeah.
This is one of those times where I'm like, oh, darn. I can't try the drink with gin and vermouth in it.
Shoot.
Oh, man. Now, because of how close the War of 1812 took place to the Revolutionary War, I think that's actually where we have to begin this episode. I know, don't get too excited. In the late 1700s, with the end of the American Revolution, this time period was one of revolution for more than just the U.S. Not long after the end of the American Revolution, the French Revolution took place. And then immediately after that, the Napoleonic Wars began. And while America chose to not get involved in these conflicts, which is a whole topic I hope to talk about one day, these wars overseas certainly affected American interest. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the War of 1812 is often referred to as the Forgotten War. And that isn't just for Americans. Many in Great Britain also do not remember the War of 1812. That is, however, because they were very much consumed during this time period by Napoleon and Napoleon's France. Another topic that we may one day cover. How many times have I said that on this podcast?
Every episode.
I was going to say someone should go through every episode and either create a tally or turn it into like a drinking game.
Right. Oh, you'd be gone.
You'd be gone.
Yeah.
For every time I say something along the lines of, I hope to talk about this one day.
Yes. Yeah.
Definitely. Anyway, this war with Napoleon was all-consuming for Great Britain. And so in an effort to stop any trade to their enemy, France, Great Britain passed the Orders in Council in 1807, which were a series of decrees which essentially stated that all neutral ships that traded with France would have to stop in Britain first to pay a fine for a license before they were allowed to trade with France or its colonies. If they refused to do that, these once neutral parties would instead be regarded by Britain as the enemy. And not only would Britain seize these ships and any money or supplies that they had on board, sometimes they would even seize the men. At this point, war with France had been going on for nearly 2 decades, so Britain was in desperate need of additional soldiers. By the time the United States ended up declaring war on Great Britain, the War of 1812, Britain's Royal Navy had seized hundreds of American ships and more than 6,000 American sailors for the British cause. Like they say, sometimes neutrality comes at a cost.
All I have to say is the British Navy was really, they were just glorified pirates. Truly.
There's stories that I'm not getting into of them hopping on board these American ships and killing
privateers.
Yeah, exactly. So I won't bore you with all the details of the various acts that were passed by the U.S. Congress at this time, but just know that there were a lot of them and that all of them were very contentious. Congress attempted to restrict trade to both Britain and France, but in turn, this ended up hurting the pockets of Americans more than anyone else. By 1810, a new wave of thinkers had been elected to Congress, a new wave that would no longer tolerate the financial restraints of the trade restrictions, the seizure of American ships and men, and even the violence that had been committed against Americans aboard ships that the British had boarded without permission. Mm-hmm. I watched a documentary about the War of 1812. Oh. It's a documentary that was put together by Buffalo Toronto Public Media, and it's available on YouTube for anyone that's interested in watching it. It was really good. But why I bring this documentary up is because I thought they did a great job of putting this moment in history and these new men that were arriving in Congress into context. Okay. Because two of the major players in the American move toward declaring war, Henry Clay and John C. Calhoun, had both been born after the United States had declared its independence from Great Britain back in 1776. And I think that helps us provide context and understanding for their line of thinking. As author Anthony Pitch put it in the documentary, quote, "What was tolerable for older Americans was insufferable for the new generation. War, for them, was the only answer," unquote.
Which is, just drawing a parallel, that makes me think of like people who were born after 9/11. It's kind of the exact opposite of this, but it's like, it shows the same thing. It's like going through security and stuff is just like part of their life. Yeah. Whereas for folks that knew otherwise, it's absolutely horrendous and stressful. Yes. And kind of that's kind of the opposite of this.
I mean, I think that stuff matters when you consider context and like who's making the decisions. Yes. When were they born? What was surrounding them at the time? What had they gone through? What had their ancestors gone through? Yeah. It puts a lot of context to why this new wave of politicians in Congress would be more inclined to declare war.
Totally, yeah.
Hey everyone, we are so excited to share with you about Macy's Wine Shop. Yes, it is that Macy's. Macy's has launched their very own wine shop, which includes full-size, delicious wines curated by their experts coming from renowned wine regions, which include our home state of California and beyond. You can select exactly what type of wine you are looking for. Do you love reds? Do you love whites? Maybe a little bit of both? You can make these personalized selections quickly and easily through the Macy's Wine Shop. What makes Macy's Wine Shop better than any other online wine club is that they deliver quality wines at unmatched price points, all within 1 to 3 business days. Seriously, I ordered my wine on a Monday and had already received them by that following Wednesday. And with our link, you get $50 off a 6-bottle box of Macy's award-winning wines, which is a $95 retail value. Head to the show notes of this episode to access the discount code, or you can head to our Instagram to find the link in our bio. Cheers!
Simultaneous to the conflicts overseas, Americans were experiencing conflict here as well. This was a time of major expansion, which entailed taking lands belonging to the Native American people. Tecumseh, a Shawnee chief and warrior, had refused to agree to treaties with Americans, namely an American named William Henry Harrison, future president, and instead encouraged Native American tribes to form a confederation that would rally against American expansion. That was a pretty revolutionary thought. People have spoken of, a lot of historians of Tecumseh saying he was beyond his years thinking that, because each of these tribes all wanted the same thing, right? But they weren't working together for it.
Well, and because they had it for however many thousands of years. Like they were a different nation. You know what I mean? Like they were completely separate, living separate lives, often looking at each other as enemies.
Yes.
And it wasn't until there was a common enemy that they had to...
For sure. And so this idea of a confederation, a united force amongst Native American tribes was really revolutionary. In 1811, Harrison, who was then the governor of the Indiana Territory, got word that Tecumseh was gathering people for this cause at Prophetstown, a location in western Indiana. Despite odds, Harrison and his troops ended up winning a battle there, the Battle of Tippecanoe, and would then burn Prophetstown to the ground. Now, why do I bring up this battle? despite the fact that it's a very interesting topic when we consider American expansion and its devastating effects on the Native American people, and a topic I'd love to cover one day.
Stop it.
But also because this was a pivotal moment in the decision to declare war on Great Britain. This defeat for the Native Americans convinced them that the only way they would be able to truly combat expansion was by aligning with the British. This was a really scary threat for Americans.
Yeah.
With all of the mounting pressure, President James Madison did indeed declare war on Great Britain on June 18th, 1812. This was a declaration met with a lot of contention, however, and actually led to the closest formal war vote in American history within the Senate.
Wow.
Americans were torn over this decision. Those from the South and the West were in favor of expansion, of course, and saw this war as an opportunity to continue that agenda, whereas many other Americans, particularly those in New England, relied upon good relations with Great Britain for trade and commerce. Also, super awkward, but just 2 days before Madison declared war on Great Britain, Britain actually repealed their trade restrictions.
Oh.
But because of the time period that we're in here,
They didn't know.
they didn't know. Word of those repeals did not reach Americans before they had already declared war.
That's embarrassing in
That's-
hindsight.
That's a little cringy there.
Yeah.
The United States began by attacking Canada, which was a British colony at the time. And they were, to their surprise, quickly and sorely defeated. In fact, and I would love to hear from our Canadian listeners about this, although the War of 1812 is often forgotten by both Americans and the British, it is super well known in Canada.
Well,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, Canada takes a lot of pride in their victories over the course of this war, and the way that this war enabled them to showcase their independence as well. A Canadian historian named Alan Greer said that the Canadian victories over America are still prevalent today. He said, quote, "Every time Canada beats the Americans in hockey, everybody is tremendously pleased.
Yes.
It's like the big brother. You have to savor your few victories over him, and this was one."
That's exactly
unquote.
what it makes
Yeah.
me feel like. Of course, Canada thinks of this as much bigger than we do.
Definitely.
You know what
This
I mean?
was their war for independence.
Oh my God. They finally beat their big brother at something.
Exactly. For lack of better terminology, this war really was a hot mess from the start. For Americans, this isn't that long after the Revolutionary War. Many men refused to fight, making it so that the initial official American army contained only 12,000 men. That is insane to me.
Yeah.
12,000 men. There was huge opposition to the war amongst Americans. Plus, the communication about the declaration of war was really poor. Word was sent by mail, which, again, in these days, could take a month or so to reach its intended recipient.
Yeah.
So for some Americans, they didn't even realize we were at war until a month or more after the conflict had begun.
Jeez.
I know. It's a hot mess, like I said. The whole thing was super disorganized. For the British, they were still engaged in the Napoleonic Wars for the first part of the War of 1812. So initially, they viewed the conflict as more of a nuisance than something they truly needed to direct their attention toward.
Yeah.
Additionally, there was also some confusion at the onset of the war as to whether they should or should not engage. You will recall that Britain had actually dropped their trade restrictions just 2 days before the US declared war.
Yeah.
So for many in Great Britain, they waited out the beginning of the war to see if Americans would knock it off once they finally received official word of the repeal. That was until 1814, when the British defeated Napoleon's armies and were finally able to focus solely on the American conflict. And in August of that year, the British invaded what is now Washington, D.C., the U.S. Capitol. They burned the Capitol building, which at this time contained the Library of Congress, the Supreme Court, and it was where the U.S. Congress convened. They burned the White House, which was then known as the Presidential Mansion, and other government buildings. President James Madison evacuated and stayed in safety at a house in Maryland. His wife, Dolly Madison, also collected her belongings and left the White House as well before the invasion. Why I bring this up is because Dolly Madison has long been credited with saving one of the most well-known portraits of George Washington before the British were able to burn the building down. However, in more recent years, someone else has been recognized for this accomplishment. A 15-year-old enslaved boy named Paul Jennings was actually an eyewitness to the White House evacuation and stated in a memoir that he wrote years later after buying his freedom that it was a doorkeeper and a gardener that had saved the portrait.
Of course.
Of course. I know. This is not shocking.
No.
In 2009, Jennings was honored by President Barack Obama for his contributions for saving that portrait. Despite what began with many defeats for the American forces, the war slowly turned in the U.S.'s favor. And although I said we wouldn't be focusing heavily on particular battles, there is one that I would like us to draw our attention to because the legacy of it is something that Americans are very, very familiar with.
Okay.
On September 18th, 1814, American soldiers beat the British Navy at the Battle of Fort Henry. The morning after this victory, American soldiers raised an American flag. And it was this very scene that would inspire Francis Scott Key to write a poem that would later be turned into a song that Americans hear every time we attend any professional sporting event, the U.S. national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner.
Every sporting event, every commencement ceremony, every
several school events.
School, you name it.
All of them.
Mostly sporting events,
yeah. One other battle I will briefly mention due to its notoriety and the notoriety of the American commander of this conflict was the Battle of New Orleans, led by this one guy that we on this podcast know absolutely nothing about, Andrew Jackson. Americans were able to defeat the British nearly flawlessly. The Americans would lose only 71 men, while the British would sustain more than 2,000 casualties.
Yikes.
Yeah.
That's some bad planning on their part.
Now, if there is anything that has plagued this war time and time again, it's the mail system and how long it takes for news to travel.
Yeah.
Because the Battle of New Orleans would actually occur 2 weeks after a peace treaty had been signed to end the war.
No.
But again, because of how long it took for word to get from one place to another, Jackson and his men had no idea that the war was actually over.
No.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah, this whole thing is embarrassing. The whole thing's embarrassing.
Right.
With both sides exhausted from the war, the Treaty of Ghent was signed on December 24th, 1814, officially ending the conflict. And you know what happened with the end of the war? Nothing. Literally nothing.
Yeah.
No territory changed hands. The British lifted all of its trade
already
restrictions.
Yeah.
And the U.S. essentially just solidified itself again as a world power. The war did have a positive impact for Canadians who were really able to establish their independence and nationalism, which is why, for them, the War of 1812 is certainly more memorable than it is for Americans and the British. The greatest losers of this war were Native Americans. Between the death of Tecumseh, who really fought for an Indian confederation across tribes, and the loss of the alliance that they had once had with the British, Native Americans truly were the most affected by the end of the war. Without British oversight, American expansion to the West went unchecked. This expansion and the seizure of Native American lands would really frame the 19th century in the United States, something that I hope to one day be able to cover. The names of this war, the American and the British, no one lost, no one won.
Yeah.
They finished the war exactly as they had started, but the Native American people suffered. And the next century of United States history demonstrates that suffering over and over again.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of #History.
All the sources used to put together this episode can be found on our website at #history-pod.com.
Subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you use, share about us with your family and friends, and then give us a rate and review.
And be sure to check us out on social media. We are on Instagram at #history_podcast.
And come join us over on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you can help support our books and booze supply. You also get access to some behind-the-scenes content, weekly #Hangout episodes, and automatic 15% off all merchandise, and we mail you cards and stickers.
Sure do.
Sure do. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Gonna vomit?
No.
It's getting bad. Do you want me to dump some of this in there? It's super orangey.
Oh no, that's great.
Mine is orange sugar water. All right. Western Indiana. In Indiana.
Indiana.
They take a lot of pride in it. Canada, that's literally my next sentence. Canada takes a lot of pride in their victories over the course of this war.
Can you say independence and nationalism?
Oh,
Again?
did I not say it?
You said nationality.
Thank you.
I just that little bit. I can
When you said nationalism, I'm like, I don't remember saying that word. Okay. Who were